Thank you, Handel, and welcome to tonight's edition of the Regional News. We start off with some news in the United States, where the Trump administration will issue visa sanctions against countries that refuse to accept people the United States aims to deport, the latest restrictive border measure implemented amid the coronavirus pandemic. President Donald Trump issued a memo on Friday night directing Chad Wolf, the acting Secretary of Homeland Security, notify Secretary of State Mike Pompeo of any nation that refused to coordinate with the United States on such deportations. At that point, Mr. Pompeo will have 7 days to impose visa sanctions, which would make it tougher, if not impossible, for those countries to get U.S. visas for their citizens. During the pandemic, the White House has been able to push through several restrictive immigration-related policies that had previously been stalled. The threat of visa sanctions on uncooperative countries was the sort of retaliatory measure some in the Trump administration had long sought. The administration has sealed the border to migrants, including those seeking asylum in the United States. Border officials are using biometric tools to check the background history of migrants before turning them around. Citing an order from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, border agents have immediately turned back more than 6,300 migrants to Mexico or their home countries without providing them a chance to apply for asylum. The administration had a similar policy blocked by the Supreme Court in 2018. Administration officials say the border measures and the new visa sanctions are efforts to prevent the spread of the infectious disease throughout the United States. Many migrants who come to the border are sick or lack documents providing their prior medical history. Now for some news in Jamaica. Health authorities are currently tracking some 1,000 Portland residents who they believe were in contact directly or indirectly with persons who have tested positive for COVID-19. Lorenzo Hume, Chief Public Health Officer for Portland, made the disclosure during the monthly sitting of the Portland Municipal Corporation last Thursday. 5 Portlanders have tested positive for the new coronavirus, one of whom reportedly displayed no symptom of the disease. His statement comes against the background of a worrying trend among the people of the parish capital, Port Antonio, who have been spotted in large groupings along several corridors to the resort town. And I quote, "We are extremely worried because among our group, we have an asymptomatic carrier among our positive cases, and in that respect, if that person had infected other persons and they are also asymptomatic, then we are in for trouble and there is a concern," end of quote, Hume said. And finally, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson said he owes his life to hospital staff in his first comment since leaving intensive care for coronavirus treatment, while his government came under mounting pressure to explain why the death toll has risen so fast. Britain has reported 2 days in a row of hospital deaths increasing by more than 900 people. Friday's death toll of 980 surpassed the highest recorded in a single day in Italy, the hardest hit country in Europe so far. The British government has had to defend its response, which has included carrying out far less testing than in some other European countries and ordering a lockdown that came comparatively late. Ministers have also resisted apologizing for a shortage of protective gear for hospital staff. Johnson, 55, was taken to St. Thomas's Hospital in central London on April 5, suffering from persistent symptoms of the disease caused by the new coronavirus. On April 6, he was moved into intensive care, where he remained until April 9. His Downing Street office said Johnson continues to make very good progress. In his absence, Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab is deputizing for him. Meanwhile, ministers were facing uncomfortable questions about whether the alarming rise in the death toll was due to the relatively late decisions to impose a lockdown on March 23. And that's it for Regional News this evening. Back to you, Handel.